All right, it's 5 past. I think we'll get this party started. Thanks everybody for coming to this meetup here. This is an AEM Meetup community event. Purpose of this is to discuss GPT and LLMs in AEM. And I want to just define that really quick first, just to make sure everybody knows those words, just so we don't keep throwing around big abbreviations that nobody knows. But GPT, this is a generative pre-trained transformer, and LLM is a large language model. And all this together, this is we're talking about generative AI, the ability to use artificial intelligence to generate content. I'm going to be your moderator. My name is Tad Reeves. I'm a principal AEM architect for Arbery Digital. Been in the AEM space since about 2010, and I've been in ops land and so forth on webs since I first entered the career in whatever, 96 or something like that. And I want to introduce our illustrious speakers that we've got here. We've got some pretty heavy duty names. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, actually. Diego, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good evening. My name is Diego Fontan. I'm a senior technical director based in Oakland, California. I have been working for Global for more than 13 years. I have been helping the organization from the AEM side from also 2010 as an AI architect, also the partnership, and also managing the relationship with Adobe. We are a digital native company that basically we have a strong mindset on AI, where we are trying to apply in every solution. We are trying to help the organization on the Adobe side, but also across the other solution. Nice to meet you, everyone, and hopefully we have a fun session.
Great. Jake, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Tad. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jake Tracy, based in Melbourne, Australia. So I'm the managing director of NICE, with a small digital agency specializing in AEM implementations. My background's in front-end development predominantly, and moved into AEM space around 5-6 years ago, and really been interested in AI and started working on some open source projects related to it. And yeah, really excited to discuss with everybody today. Thanks.
Great. And Albert.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Hey all, good morning, good evening. So this is Alvin Isaac. I have over 10 years of experience in digital experience management. Also mainly worked with Adobe AEM Experience Manager for over 10 years. So currently I'm working as a digital architect with Boston Scientific Corporation, mainly taking care of web strategy and architecture. Also, I'm very interested on writing blogs on different topic. You would have seen AEM and other topics too. Also, other thing is I'm always passionate about learning these new technologies like generative AI or other technologies, and adopting that to meet the business requirement as the main thing. So obviously everybody knows generative AI is one of the hot topic across everywhere. So I'm very much excited to be part of this webinar and give my view or insight on how we can use generative AI to enable AEM different capabilities on AEM. Nice to meet you all.
Great. All right. Thanks, Alvin. All right. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, I want to first just level set a bit on why this is relevant, because if any of you guys have been to Adobe Summit, seen any of the keynotes, AI has been in the keynote every single year prominently since 2016, 2017, something like that. And so why is this new? Why is this relevant? Because there have been AI features that have been integrated into Adobe Experience Manager for years and years. And anybody who's done an AEM implementation anytime recently, or really anytime within the last 5 years, has probably touched some AI tooling of some sort, whether we're talking about smart tags, or we're talking about smart crop, or we're talking about even just video and optimizing video and so forth. So all these things that have been under the banner of Adobe Sensei for a while, these are tools that a lot of people are familiar with, but Gen AI is not so familiar. So I first off, I want to, Amit, I don't know if you have that poll ready, but I wanted to see if I can get an idea of the audience that we've got here and who has had some exposure to generative AI. So if so, can you pull that poll up real quick? Presuming.
Yeah, so we do
it's
have the poll over here, and I'm just
here we go. Great. So, there's a single choice if you've used either of those. Well, we can. If you've used either of those, then go ahead and vote. I'm interested if you've used either. If you haven't used any of them, then don't vote. But I guess we wanted multiple choice. But give it a go. Give a second for that to
thank you
come
all
through.
for participating.
Yep.
Almost everyone has used ChatGPT tab.
Okay, awesome. All right, good. Well, awesome. This is not new news. What may be new news, though, is how to integrate it with AEM, because I think one thing that a lot of us have been somewhat unclear on is what is already going to be built into the product. What is Adobe going to be giving us as a part of the product? What are they already developing, and what are you going to be responsible for as a developer to go and seek outside integrations, outside third parties, and so forth? Because you know that there is some tooling that Adobe is going to come to bat with, and I think a lot of you guys have probably used Firefly. If any of you guys are Creative Cloud folks, you probably used the Photoshop beta that has some really amazing generative AI features. Assets has some amazing generative AI features. So we want to just dig right into this, and then to kick that off, Jake's got a demo. So let it rip.
Yeah, thanks, Tad. So I wanted to give you a bit of a preamble about the demo I'm about to do, and actually I think I really started like a lot of developers wondering how, after seeing ChatGPT, how I could build something with that technology, and ran through a lot of different ideas in my head, and actually stumbled upon a blog post of another panelist here, Albin, who had done an integration between the OpenAI APIs and AEM, and I saw that and read it, and I was like, I have to build something in this space. It's something unique to AEM, and so that's really what started. How can we make authoring experience integrated with language models? And then, so I started to think about what features could we add to an integration like this. Obviously, ChatGPT is a pretty open-ended chatbot style, but we could definitely started writing down a lot of different features that we could have. For example, like custom prompts. We could do things like translation. Could do things like proofreading of content, adding in additional authoring, editing features, and just trying to make it a very simple authoring experience for the content authors. And then in the future, started thinking about what's more features that we can add. So the OpenAI APIs allow you to integrate your own models. So you could kind of use a style guide, for example, for content generation, or generating entire pages automatically, or based on content that was already on the page. So where we're currently at, I'll just share my screen now. I'll give you the demonstration. So the way that the integration works is essentially it hooks into any component that you want it to. So currently I basically have it hooked into a text component. And what it will do is add this button here. So essentially you get an additional icon on your editor, which will then allow you to open up this screen here. So I was using Jasper.ai a lot. If you're familiar a little bit with a few of the AI tools that have come around, Jasper.ai was really a copywriter-based tool. So it provided a lot of prompts, inbuilt prompts that were going to do some heavy lifting for you in terms of generating content that was specific for writing, for copywriter. The most basic one would be write a free prompt. So I could say, for example, write me a poem about why dogs are better than cats. Something very simple. And so what this is doing in the back end, you basically add your own OpenAI API key. It's not really restricted to any actual API, but for now it's just integrated with OpenAI APIs. You can go to their website, sign up, generate yourself an API key rather, and then plug it into the OSGI configs in your AEM. And then there you go. So we've got ourselves a nice poem. So another step, obviously you might want to edit the content that comes out of OpenAI. So you can just edit it as if it was just a normal WYSIWYG editor in AEM. And then you can hit save, and it's all rendered. The HTML comes through, so it's all marked up correctly for easy integration with your existing site. You don't need to worry about adding paragraphs or headings, everything like that. You can also in the WYSIWYG editor, but we're trying to get it to be as seamless of an authoring experience for content authors as possible. So then obviously there's a lot of other types of prompts here, and these are all kind of built in a framework in the back end. So it's very easy to add and remove these prompts. So if you have things that are specific to your organization or specific types of content that you want to create, you can also add them here. So your content authors will be exposed to them as opposed to these kind of pre-canned ones. So for example, if I wanted to say, create a FAQ, I could say, you know, Adobe Experience Manager, I'll do 3 questions and I'll do a playful tone of voice. All of these inputs are basically customizable as well. So you can essentially decide what content in, what the prompt is going to be and where to inject that content. And then to get the result out is basically what happens here. So there we go. I've got now nicely marked up, you know, FAQ about AEM. And when I hit save, it's automatically ingesting all of the styles and everything like that from AEM. So this is kind of the most simple implementation. We've got prompts, we've got data going in, and you know, we've got a nice author integration here. But when I was building out the features, I started to think, well, ChatGPT and OpenAI is really good at doing content editing as well. So for example, if I hit the edit button now, it's populating it with all of the content that's in this text field. And we've also got a lot of these prompts up here, which are really simple tools that you can use to improve the quality of your content. So for example, if I say, modify this to say what, and you know, try to mess up the content a little bit, you can just hit proofread. And that's going to go and proofread your content, fix any spelling and grammatical mistakes automatically for you. So it's a good kind of last mile check of the content that you're producing to essentially fix it up. And we've added a lot of these. And again, these are also just kind of a thin layer between the prompts themselves, which are asking the AI to proofread this content for me, you know, improve the content for me, make it longer or make it shorter, for example. And these are also customizable because essentially, you know, content in, what I'm asking the AI to do, and then the content out. Because it's open source, you're actually able to download this package, and I'll show you that momentarily. So we got all of these basic editing features as well. The final one would be translating. So ChatGPT and OpenAI currently support these languages: English, French, Italian, and German. So I can hit translate, and it's going to take all of that content and then do a translation into French. I don't personally read French or speak French, but I'm told that it works very well in terms of this. And the benefit of this also is that you can choose the model that you're using from ChatGPT. This one is using GPT 3.5 Turbo, I believe, but it supports obviously, and there you go, it looks like French. And once GPT-4 is enabled for all accounts, you can switch over to that, or also use your own model if you have that, for example. So the repo, and there's actually a website, so you can actually go and download this now and install it into your author instance, which will basically unlock all of these. Essentially, you just need to plug in. If I hit get started, you just have to generate yourself an OpenAI API key, download the package, or you can build it yourself from the source, log in, do a little bit of configuration, and then you will essentially have this enabled on every text component, and you can add it to any components. If you have a lot of custom components, you just need to identify where to inject the content and what component to add it to, and it will add this functionality to it there. So more than welcome to go and have a look at the GitHub project. There's a nice little video there as well. Take a look and please raise a pull request, you know, and try to contribute. Essentially, we want to build a framework for adding new prompts, integrating with other APIs, and really extend this out as kind of an open source tool that content authors and developers can use to continually add AI functionality to the AEM interface. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Jake, that's amazing. My only biggest question is, what are your plans for taking OPEX public? When's your IPO, and how do I invest?
Yeah, originally I did want to kind of productize it, but I think it works better in this case as an open source project. And I really have to thank again Alban, who really did the initial kind of the idea to some extent is from Alban. I really just extended upon that a lot, and I think the way that you get a community and the continued development of projects like this is through open source. So don't expect any IPO soon.
That's great. All right, well, let's move on then in our discussion. Unless anybody has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A pod. We'll be answering them as we can. Let's see. First of all, can I get some thumbs up? Does everybody have audio still? A couple people are saying they're having audio issues. Is audio all good for everybody?
Ted, we have one question over here. Is
Okay.
the link to the repository for the code handy?
Jake, you want to throw that into the chat pod and we can have that for everybody? We'll also have this,
Yep.
this presentation afterwards.
Yeah, it's there now. Thanks.
Okay, great.
We have one more question from Brian Lee. Google says AI generated content is against guidelines.
So, I mean, I guess that gets into governance, and that's something that we were going to be talking about very shortly as to what's okay and what's not okay, and what when you're sourcing it, what makes it okay, and is it okay to use for your site in your particular application? And I guess we can use that maybe to segue, unless one of you guys wants to pitch an answer right now. Otherwise, Diego, we can just use this to dive directly into some of your content.
Yep. Okay, here we are.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this first. So in terms of integrations, Diego is going to give an overview of what's currently out there, and what is Adobe currently offering, what integrations currently exist. Yeah, go ahead, take it away.
Absolutely, thank you. Basically, we are setting for something more generic, providing what we are in terms of Adobe, and then how we could move forward for integration using ChatGPT and different considerations that we could use for reusing something that is there, or also be something from the scratch, but what kind of consideration we should take if we are going to implement something from the scratch for our organization. So let's start with Adobe. Adobe, as said at the beginning, they started a long time ago from 2015 with AI and Sensei, and start to add different features to try to apply machine learning and AI in a different products. So we started to see, for example, Sensei applying for Adobe Experience Cloud. For example, one of the painful that we have long time ago is every time that you want to generate different variation from your content and start to apply personalization and those kind of things, if you have to do it one, it's going to be a pain. So that's the reason that it start to come out with Sensei. You start to generate ton of personalized content for campaign or a different kind of thing, but it's not only there. It start to apply for a different product and it start to accelerate content generation for e-commerce, for search, and different kind of thing. And also start to apply also from the different solution, Adobe Document Cloud, how to accelerate, scan, signing, those kind of process that is also painful when you need to fill that form, or for example, for creative, right? In the past, we need the UX or the creative guy to generate those kind of things. Right now, we could build some decent images or content very easily with the help of Sensei. That it was something that every Adobe Summit also they are bringing a new thing. But right now with generative AI, Adobe start to add more features. That's the reason that come out with for Adobe is called Sensei AI. That is a Gen AI solution that basically try to apply for certain use case, try to apply Gen AI and start to accelerate, optimize, and provide different experience for different products. So at that moment that come out with Gen AI, and as we can see, Adobe maybe it's not moving faster as ChatGPT and the different options that come up right away. Every time that you want to test one specific feature, is something that it changed and is more accurate or is changing and those kind of things. But Adobe is adding for different products. For example, Adobe Experience Manager, I have something that is for content generation that allows something similar that Jake showed, but is maybe doesn't have all the features, but is going in that direction that helps to just create content right away, more accurate, more fast, and try to accelerate that process that sometimes takes months for marketer or those roles that need to have the content ready. You could have it right away for multi-region, multi-language very easily. So there are more things to add there, adding more prompting, but for sure is a way that AEM adding Gen AI there, but also for the other product. For example, for asset, integrating Adobe Firefly, that is something that they launched on the Adobe Summit for image generation, and how to connect both to have an excellent access ready for AEM and for the other product right away. Or for example, for a CDP for the real time, how you identify missing audience that you are not targeting. So it's very easy that you could target, identify, okay, I'm missing this audience. So you could create, for example, a specific experience for those audience and try to increment how you are approaching those audience. For example, something that it was very cool for Marketo, they create they call generative chat that basically allows in real time provide a different option that you could summarize, provide more information and add information in the real time when you are talking with your target audience. And of course, for the creative, Photoshop is one of the key things that they are adding generative field. That is something that for us in the past it was very complicated, at least for not those persons that have that creative background. You could start to use more and more, even that you don't have that background. So in that kind of thing allows to accelerate our process, and also we could focus in the real thing. Just for example, for targeting, you could test many options right away instead of creating, spend a lot of time in that process and then test and then you're coming back. So that process improvement is much better with this kind of tool. Of course, although we have bunches of things, but there are more that also we could suggest and start to add. And I believe in the coming months, they're going to add more and more.
That's right. So one of the questions that came up that Prasanna asked, and that is that the difference between the AI tooling and models and so forth that Adobe has in Sensei and what OpenAI has got with ChatGPT. Do any of you guys want to take that as an overall answer? Like why go out and use OpenAI for your plugin as an example, Jake, as opposed to things and APIs that are available in Sensei?
Yeah, I think that Adobe, I wouldn't say they've been behind the game, because like you mentioned at the start, Sensei's been around for quite a while. I think in terms of the tooling, until it starts to hit everybody, and you know, if you're using AEM now, you're not really seeing the AI tools directly in it yet. And I think with Copilot, it's probably going to change a lot. But
right.
OpenAI kind of hit everybody with like, you now have access to these amazing APIs. And then you have things like Hugging Face, which also gives you access to just an unlimited amount of APIs constantly. So there's probably two different streams of work. Adobe have, you know, their objectives and their long-term goals about where they want to sit with AI. And I think with Firefly in particular, they've really obviously outgrown everybody. They've created something which is truly special, especially if you compare it to, say, Stable Diffusion or Midjourney. Firefly has a few really unique characteristics which puts it above that, which you can see in the partnership with Google. They've obviously got a really great product there. But OpenAI, I think, definitely blew everybody away with GPT-3. That was the one that everybody started to really take notice of this technology. And the APIs are very easy to use and available to everybody. So I think with OPEX, for example, like I mentioned, the objective is to integrate with as many different APIs as possible. So I did a basic Stable Diffusion integration to create images. And obviously with Hugging Face, you just have so many different models and training sets available to you. And ultimately, that's where you can bring in the real power. When you have all of this data and training sets and models available, you can integrate them with so many different things. I think it's still an open question as to how Adobe's implementation of that into AEM, for example, is going to play out, but it's very exciting to see.
Indeed. And yeah, if anybody has played around with the features that have been integrated into assets, that I think that the long term on that is ridiculously exciting, especially for anybody who's got an AEM site that has a lot of assets. And if you got something like, if you're a whatever, your fashion or shoes or outdoors or something where you've just got 10,000 SKUs, you get a new product that comes out, you shot it in the studio, and nobody wants to buy a tent sitting in a studio because nobody goes camping in a studio. But if you put that tent, by a lake, you put the tent, in some, crazy forest. If you put that tent, then all of a sudden it sells it, and then you didn't have to go out and do that shoot. And which, to me, that is like that's the next generation afterwards. Like, I don't know if anybody was at some of these summits. There's one in, I think it was 2018, where they first announced that that the IKEA catalog, the entire IKEA catalog, is actually all 3D rendered. It's not. There's nothing in the IKEA catalog that is actually a real photo. It's all been rendered because that's the fastest way to roll that content out. Well, now that same sort of thing comes out for things that aren't 3D rendered, like a picture of a blender or something like that. Or somebody using a blender, you can just take that model who's using a blender and put them in a fancy kitchen, put them in a apartment or whatever. That sort of thing allows you to roll that kind of content out, especially when that AI has been trained on things that are usable. It's been trained on things that are already from Adobe stock. So so license-wise, you don't have to worry about rolling that content out, which gets back to governance. As is this thing brand safe? Can I take something that AI generated and stick it out on my site? Which I guess gets right into this here slide, which in terms of what makes you able to even launch something at all. And does anyone want to start taking this or talking on the subject of governance and but then also security?
Yeah, and something to add to the previous question. I believe that if you want to compare Adobe Gen AI, what we have with ChatGPT, another option, I would say that one of the key aspects is governance and security. Why? At some point, when you are using Adobe or the product that they're launching, you have certain security that the security is considered in place. They are trying to maximize and optimize the integration with any product that Adobe provide. You don't have to deal with those kind of things that you need to build from the scratch, but you don't know exactly if your security, your architecture, and those kind of things are ready and it's safe to share with everyone. So at the moment that you start to consume those products, those features that Adobe provide, you know that at a certain level that is secure, and at least you could serve to your organization and your client. In the other way around, it's different discussion that you need to do the review. You have to do many things before to incorporate. Yeah, you are adding functionality, but before that, you need to ensure the other aspects are covered. Otherwise, you are in jeopardy to have a security breach at any matter. So that's one of the important things at the moment that you are jumping for integration. Before to say, hey, I'm going to use this one. Basically, there are key aspects that you have to take in account, very important from the beginning. First, you have to have a clear vision why you want to use Gen AI. Why it's important for you? What are the use case that you are saying, and maybe you could find out some efficiency? What are the use case that maybe add value? Because it's a keyword that everyone is using. Of course, we are seeing the value, but in certain aspects, what are the return to use it? So that's one of the key things. Another aspect that maybe in other solutioning is not quite important, but right now the ethical consideration come up very strong. And for any aspect that you are using, ethical is one of the key things along with security. And the other thing is, okay, how you measure that your implementation is a, of course, this kind of thing is always is something that we consider when you are trying to bring a new solution. But nowadays, it's more important how to measure how effective is your solution applying Gen AI in a different workflow. How effective is your automation, and you could focus, for example, for doing certain things to shift to another step. So that's another important thing. So I believe those kind of things, if you don't have a clear mindset and on those topics, for sure you are going to fail because you're missing there, and you realize that you don't have clarity whether your stakeholder use case, or even, okay, what are the POC that basically allow to test a little bit the ground, and what are the benefits that you could get with those approach, and start to use it. Otherwise, you're going to fail.
Agreed.
Yeah, maybe Ted, I want to add some points on the governance and security. So
absolutely.
obviously, yeah, the models are kind of evolving, but obviously, like the companies while adopting these AI models or AI technologies, we need to define some set of principles and policies, right? So what employees should be doing and should not be doing, because it can provide a lot of functionality and capabilities, but maybe it's a company specific, right? Some companies need more quality, need more security. So that's
Yes.
one of my perspective there. Then, so maybe some companies might be interested to use their own private model, right? Than
Right.
using a kind of open model. So that strategy obviously need to be defined based on their need, right? Can they use the public model or private model? Another one is like, people keep writing this prompt, right? So obviously, but maybe some prompt monitoring and filtering is also required. Like what kind of data you are providing to the model, right? Maybe
Right.
anonymizing the data, right? We should not be kind of entering some critical data to the model. So maybe they train with that, right? Something that's a kind of a data governance, ensuring we are sharing the required data. Another one important factor, even there was a question, the model hallucination, right? So model may give some wrong data. So maybe obviously there should be some initially at least some review and approval process is required. Also, to ensure we are like ensuring the governance and security is in place.
I totally agree. And so both you and Diego brought up points that I think are interesting to bring up in the context of personnel, because if there's one thing that that the media pundits around the world love to talk about is how AI is going to take all your jobs, and so now AI is going to do your job, and you're going to be out of a job, you're going to be on the street. But you guys have both just brought up like 10 different serious jobs that are up the stack from a mechanical job where you're just, I'm taking this, I punch the thing out, I take a new background, I put it on AEM, and I do the next asset, and I make it square, and I put it on AEM. Like, it's like you're basically, it's like Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times. You ever seen that, where the guy's just like twisting the bolts, and that's all he does all day? Like, a lot of AEM users, maybe they're thinking with brand safety, but most of their work is twisting the bolts. And this opens up all these new jobs, basically, of how do you wrangle AI? Because I mean, Alvin, you're in a very regulated industry. You can't just have anybody doing anything and just putting something up, because then you might see a picture of something which totally violates all kinds of guidelines.
That's true.
And it's totally illegal to actually have online. So these aren't things that you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to just go out to Adobe Firefly and make it just generate anything, because that may be just completely unacceptable. So these are new jobs, new job descriptions, new technologies, new expertises that have to be thought with. And I think so. I mean, Raf is actually on, asked a question. So do we think that marketers and product owners would be okay with the generated content that are seen in text and images, or do you think that we'll want to review the content for things like appropriateness or branding? And that is the big deal right there, is that who are the people that are going to do that?
Yeah, that's actually something, when building a tool that integrates directly into the UI, it was something that occurred to me is, it's very rare in my experience that an organization has a person authoring the content inside of AEM that's actually writing the content. It's almost always going through an approval process, that's completely separate to the actual authoring experience. And as the tooling gets closer to the, you can create the content inside the tool now, it possibly makes things like using workflows a much more appealing option. If you actually implement the workflow functionality correctly with a legal, and as much kind of hoops you need to jump through, it kind of enables us using better tooling and kind of leaving an outdated and possibly way more labor intensive process behind. But I think it's a big change from a process change perspective for organizations to move from somebody emails a Word doc to the legal team and they email it back to their PO and they email it to somebody else. So it's definitely something that I think organizations are going to have to go through a big change process to update as we get the ability to really do things quickly with inside the software as opposed to outside and then plugging it into AEM, for example.
Indeed.
I can add one point there. Sorry. So another like add to Jack, right? So what purpose we are using, right? So maybe let's say like we have a base content, try to create a variations, right? So maybe that variations may not require much review, but also like we are trying to optimize SEO. We are trying to summarize the content. So maybe that's a safe use cases. So some use cases like creating a image, creating a new content, right? So maybe that's why we need to identify the safe use cases. So some use cases critical that still need review.
Indeed. But Jake, on your point on workflows, right? So one of the things that we're trying to do, obviously, is to eliminate toil. Very similar to like the DevOps land where you're trying to eliminate toil and eliminate things that you're doing again and again and again, right? Manually. So if you've got something that another thing that would be manual would be an approval workflow. It always comes through, and I'm the legal guy, and I got to click OK, and it comes through, and I got to click OK, sort of a thing. But to build that same AI and machine learning and modeling into the workflow itself. So if I'm usually saying OK, why did I say OK? And if I disapproved it, why did I disapprove it? And how can you train something to then get, so you're not having to, your AEM inbox is 640,000 assets long to be able to click OK to, you know what I mean? So could you train a model to help you with your workflows?
I think it hadn't even occurred to me that would be a good idea. But it obviously is, though. I guess the crux of this to me is like, at what point do you feel that you no longer need a human approval to put something live, right? So that would make your life very easy as a content approver, but you've then essentially offloaded all of that responsibility onto the AI. So you better trust that AI is not going to make any mistakes.
Right.
But I think with the right model, with the right training, if you train it well enough and then potentially have, your edge cases where I don't know if this is actually appropriate or not, and then it asks you, there's definitely some tooling you could build in there. Yeah. Right.
What is the percentage chance that this is going to be disapproved? And if it's more than 5%, then send it to the human and have the human click OK on it and review it, sort of a thing. And if they say it's not OK, then why?
Yep.
So one question from the audience here is, how would you scale the usage of AI for the use cases mentioned when managing a 50+ country site in 30 languages? Who wants to take that one? And does this
I can
China?
I can give a suggestion. I think one of the ways to scale, and I think this isn't something that any type of content authoring tool, but I think maybe to what you mentioned earlier, Tad, with being able to create, say you have a picture of a tent and then you want to have that tent in a different location. I think the really unique not unique, but the really amazing use case potentially is having that work with personalization. So if you know that the cohorts have a specific interest set or a specific, they're a man in their 40s or whatever cohort they exist in, you can generate all of these different images for those specific cohorts. And I think it works the same for content. So as opposed to creating numerous experience fragments and then populating with different content and then delivering them to different groups using target, the AI can really do this for you. And just that little bit of customization, that little bit of personalization probably allows us some real amazing granular level content specificity for individual groups. I think that's one way that it could scale really well. And it's probably one of the lower risk outcomes as well, because you'll already have a base set of content that you're developing from. And then it's essentially just customize this a little bit to make it more appropriate for this specific cohort. I think that's something that could be deployed at scale. And it really comes down to how good data do you have on your customers and of your users,
Right.
and then apply it to that. That would be one idea, I think, to do this at scale.
Right. Because to being able to modify the input to take into account in those cohorts your ethnicities and legal ramifications and so forth. Like you're not going to be able to apply all the same rules to writing text and so forth, and generating images. Say, let's just say you have an English like your EN or ENUS and ENSG for Singapore, right? So obviously the images you generate for Singapore are going to be all the way different from the ones you're generating for the US. The things that you can say and things that would be acceptable for the US would be quite different in Singapore. Or if you're doing ENHK as an example, you would need to take into account everything that that would be potentially offensive or would get you blacklisted from the local government. So things like that would I mean, again, we're talking about a whole new set of employees and people who are doing jobs, like people who are, fine, you may not need people manually tagging things and stuff like that. Now you need people who are really going to be like hawks watching this stuff and thinking and how do you modify these things and how do you make it work. All right, let's see. What do we have next here? Goodness gracious. All right, let's see if we got any other questions here from the audience that we haven't yet taken up. How about search training?
I think this is something that it was there, and maybe search is the easy use case that we could incorporate how to touch different sources and start to train and have more intelligent search that allows to, for example, create different journey more easily. I believe that's the target. The idea that instead of going from different tools, how we could through the search find out across all the tools that you have from Experience Cloud, Document Cloud, and try to create something that basically compile everything easily. That's the ideal scenario for me. But for sure, in terms of implementation and understanding, is the easy way. Search, it will always there outside of AEM with different custom search engine. This is the way to go. Maybe there are more complex cases, but first you have to have more intelligent search with the power of Gen AI, for sure.
So Ted, if I can add one point there, because when we talk about the search, right, as like Diego mentioned, it's a relevant content, right? So providing the relevant content at the right time. So, but my perspective now, it's more of like advanced chatbots and virtual agents, maybe question and answering tools, right? So behind the scene, maybe it's a bound-to-a search engine, but it may be more of chatbot, how this AI capabilities can help to enable a kind of virtual agent or chatbot. So like users can get the required data at the required time or right time, right? So that's what I feel as a trend based on this generative AI tools.
Right.
We have one more question over here from Naveen Kaushal, who wants to know, does generative AI models also support automated translations of content for multilingual sites?
Yeah.
You definitely could. I wonder, so like OpenAI currently supports the language, French, German, and Italian, I think, as well as English. So, theoretically, you could translate your entire site using that. Again, it probably comes down to, you probably reduce the work of 10 people, and then you're working with a single person potentially to then validate that the translations are correct. It is very difficult to guarantee the validity, like Albert mentioned, the hallucination. It's like, it's very easy for the AI. I wouldn't say very easy, but it's common for the AIs currently to give false positives or the wrong information. But currently you can plug any kind of, if you say to ChatGPT, translate this block of text into French, it's going to do it practically perfectly. So yeah, you could definitely do it on a multilingual site at scale.
There's another question over here from an anonymous attendee who wants to know, how are the pricing options for ChatGPT API? So is it based on the number of calls you make, or how does the pricing work?
It's based on tokens monthly. So, and depend also the model that you choose is how much it costs. So basically it's token and also the model. Depend on the model, for example, is depend of your use case. If you want images or you want text or you want more accurate or no, for example, there are different options, and based on that is the pricing that is going up or down. But there are different options, and for sure is one of the key things at the moment that you are building your solution is, okay, what are the best model that fit in my context, also to avoid overpricing. As always, you consider when you are using as a cloud provider, what is your best solution, and you try to optimize there. That's another point that you are bringing to the table that you should be taking into account. Otherwise, you are going to go away with the pricing. Of course, there are ways to limit. For example, when you're calling the PIA, at the moment that I reach this price, stop the using. That kind of thing is there, but at least for ChatGPT doesn't have the way to basically manage as a company, as a organization, that basically you could define certain configuration that apply for everyone. That is one of the missing things that for certain companies that I have been working, for example, they start using platform as a service that basically provide for every engineering, basically provide a user that basically for every user you define all the configuration, but it's not something at the company level you could define generic and then apply for everyone. It's something that I believe is an improvement point.
Excellent. We have another question over here from Siva Kumar Pisupati, who wants to know, how do we integrate with Gen AI? Do we need to install any package?
So you can install the package on the OPAX package, and that will do it if you follow there. But I don't know if there's any other way in AEM currently to do an integration. But yeah, if you just go to the Git.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, yeah, if you go to the GitHub or go to opax.ai, it has instructions for setting up that integration there.
If I can add one point there, yes, technically it is like, as Jake mentioned, like finally you are using some APIs to integrate. So you can build your custom, otherwise like the open source repository, whatever Jake is providing, right? You can take that and install. So then you will have the baseline and you can go from there.
And there is, coming out in AEM as a cloud service, there is Sensei Gen AI for text in AEM site, and that is coming on now in terms of pricing and how that works. That is something that's been opaque to me so far. I've yet to do any implementations of such myself, so I don't know how that's priced. Diego, I don't know if you've done any implementations that use that as yet.
I don't have the pricing in mind, but.
Yeah. But at least that doesn't require a package. I mean, that's built into the product in that case. It's a feature that can be flagged on, as far as I know.
Exactly. What you're going to the admin console, basically, you're going to see the different options that you enable for you. And when you have it there, you could start to use it.
That's right. And in terms of the other Gen AI features that Adobe is rolling out, I mean, that's so the assets features that it's not in the straight up assets product yet, the cloud service product, but if you use Express, a lot of those Firefly features have been integrated into Express. I don't know if anybody's gotten a chance to play with that yet, but it's pretty awesome in terms of being able to, in terms of what you can roll out and being able to just think with what that can potentially be once it's integrated into the full assets product is pretty huge in terms of just, generate me banner ads, generate me, email landing page or a landing page or things like this, where these are intensely manual, mechanical things that that graphic designers had to do before, that really weren't seriously exercising their graphic design skills. They were mostly mechanical. That now they can just kind of rise up the stack a little bit in terms of being able to guide a model.